Fox 21 Local News presents a primetime panel, State of the Economy, hosted by Scott Kilberry and Rachel Sauer.
Good evening and welcome to a special Fox 21 News presentation covering the economic landscape.
Now, it's a fact of life that all of us can relate to. And with so much uncertainty going around, we feel that it's a great opportunity to showcase this topic.
So we gathered a panel of local experts to help you better understand what you should know and what to look out for in the future.
This includes Chris Abeyta, co-founder and owner of Confidence Financial Partners, Dr. Tatiana Bailey, Director of Data-Driven Economic Strategies, and Dirk Hobbs, founder and executive publisher of Colorado Media Group.
Yeah, thank you all for being here tonight. We're looking forward to your expertise and insight, so let's get right into it.
Okay, first question, we'll start with Tatiana. How does this current economy compare to ones that we may have experienced in the past?
Well, there are a lot of changes, certainly of late, and I'd say it's unprecedented. From my perspective, I mean, if you look at GDP, I have a slide that I'll share with you. It's been a while since we've had a contraction, and of course we had one during the pandemic, but it was very short-lived, right? Mm-hmm. And you remember it was a sharp decline, but then a sharp rebound that was above and beyond. So that was actually really positive, and still a lot of turmoil, but things calmed down fairly quickly. This time around, I'd say it's unprecedented because of the level of uncertainty. I talk to business owners and they say, just tell me. I don't even care if it's bad news. Just tell me so I know how to plan. Mm-hmm. But when things are changing week to week, sometimes day to day, it's difficult for the farmers, for the manufacturers, for the small businesses, for the restaurants. So, therein lies the problem, right? And as the chart shows, we did actually have a contraction in Q1, negative 0.2, which is a small contraction, but you only need 2 consecutive quarters of a negative GDP read, and it's technically a recession. I don't think that's going to happen in Q2 because we had some distortions with a lot of imports and pulling forward. But with, tariffs being completely different now, and also, we were at a roughly 3% tariff rate before January, and now we're at a 10%, and that's if everything else is on hold or really thrown out the window. So that makes it very likely that we're going to see some increased inflation.
Uncertainty is the key word here, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's everything. Everybody hates uncertainty. Same thing when it comes to retirement. That's probably the biggest killer. I don't know if it's the biggest killer, but it's the thing people fear the most is when they can't see, and I call it future fog. Is a lot of people want to know, do I have enough to retire? Is my money on track? If something happens to me, will my spouse be okay? Will my money last? And when you can't see the answers to those questions, it's this fog and it's this uncertainty, and that uncertainty creates fear, mm-hmm. and it creates doubt. And so one of the things that we try and do with data and what we try and do is blow that fog away so people can actually see what the future looks like, and then they can actually relax. And business owners need that as well. Mm-hmm. They need to give us some stability, give us some certainty, and then when we know what that certainty is, we can make decisions and we can move forward. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, backing that feeling up with data is going to be instrumental, especially for small business owners, because they feel everything. And whether it's a positive impact or a negative impact, there's not necessarily data behind what they're sensing. Mm-hmm. It's just an impulse. Mm-hmm. And so it's very prudent to watch the tea leaves, so to speak, and listen to the subject matter experts who can understand how those variances in the economic slide, either way, up or down, start to make sense for your business. And don't panic. I think that's one of the key words.
Yeah. Good advice. Yeah, hard not to.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. And we'll move on to the next question here now. Are you noticing public outlook is better or worse on the economy than years past? And Chris, we'll start with you.
I think it's exactly what Tatiana said a minute ago. There's this sense of uncertainty, but I do think you've got a couple of different camps. I think some people are listening specifically to the negative side and the uncertainty and the tariffs. As Tatiana said, the tariffs have changed dramatically. And when we go back and we look at April of 2025, I mean, we saw the stock market drop dramatically. All that uncertainty created fear. And then as things began to, certain deals came in place or delays got put in place, then all of a sudden people start to breathe, the market starts to breathe again. And then I think there's this macro hope or this sense that trillions of dollars coming back into the United States, manufacturing, data centers coming in. There's a lot of good things, that momentum is happening. So we're kind of in that middle zone where some things aren't certain, but I do think we're starting to see a nice momentum. I mean, oil's back down to $64 a gallon, which is fantastic. I'd like to see gas prices come back down a little bit faster, but we still have a high mortgage rate, and we still have a 4.5% 30-year treasury. So those are some of the uncertainties that we're dealing with, but I do think that long term, I think some people are just sensing the country is moving the right direction compared to where they felt like maybe it was 6 months ago.
So Dirk, what would you say you hear from a local business perspective about the economy and the uncertainty?
Yeah, right now I think they're sensing and feeling the contraction in the marketplace. Sales taxes are going to be down. There's fewer foot traffic, lower foot traffic. There's lower volumes in general. So what they're seeing is people holding onto their wallets a little tighter, and maybe they're window shopping, maybe they're just coming through to see the downtown area, but they're not necessarily parking in every restaurant for a long time or every retail store. So you really feel that firsthand on the retail level. As you go into the services realm, you start to see a little bit of a different impact because the behavior shifts. So if you're not going out to eat and you're not going to retail establishments, maybe you're making home improvements. Maybe you're doing some different things along those lines that would keep those businesses a little more firm in this uncertain economy than they would be otherwise. For the larger businesses in the community, they're kind of keeping their nose down and following the bigger picture of the macroeconomic discussion for the United States and even the globe. So we have a lot of aerospace, defense, advanced manufacturing firms in the community. So they are really focused on delivery to the government, their main customer.
If I could just jump in, because you said something that's spot on. I have a graph for University of Michigan consumer sentiment, and it shows that, again, the sort of the unprecedented nature. We're at an index of about 50 right now, which is historically really low. We were averaging about 98, 96 prior to the pandemic, and the next slide then shows, well, how does this impact consumerism in general?
Yep.
And that one shows that we are again at record lows in terms of how many respondents are saying yes to this is a good time to buy. Incredibly low for household to buy a house because of this, roughly 7% mortgage rate and being locked in. 75% of mortgages are at 4% or less.
Yeah.
So we're not moving. I'm told my husband we're not downsizing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But also for vehicles and other discretionary items. And then today I just saw something from McKinsey saying that over 50% of respondents at the very end of May were saying we're going to cut back on discretionary spending.
Nice.
And that was across household income levels. So again, that really shows you how deep it goes. And the last thing I'll add too, that 3%-ish trade weighted average for tariffs. We're now at that roughly 10%. It's interesting to me how many consumers really get that.
I know.
And I think they especially get it because prices are about 30-ish% higher than they were in January of 2020.
Right.
And most of us have not experienced inflation like that.
Yeah. So good information, and we're just scratching the surface here. You are watching a primetime panel on the current economic landscape.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Welcome back to our primetime panel on the economy and its impact on Southern Colorado.
Retirement is a goal we should all have in mind, but depending on who you talk to, their outlook might be a little different. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into the first question.
Yeah, if you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, what should you do right now to prepare for retirement? Chris?
Well, if you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, the best thing that you can actually do is save. Okay, you can max out your 401ks if you've got IRAs. The biggest asset that you have is your time horizon. So as you're putting money in, you're giving it, you may have 3, 4, 5 decades, maybe not 5, but 3 or 4 decades. A lot of my clients, and the wealthiest clients that I worked with, they started saving 3, 4 decades ago. And so I have the privilege of working with them. But they started when they were young. They kept dollar cost averaging in, putting money in every single paycheck. And if I could go back and give myself one piece of advice for myself before I was in this industry, is don't try and time the market. I remember back in 2000, the market crashed and I couldn't take it and I jumped out. And then I didn't get back in until the market started recovering. And then I did that again. So if you think, hey, I've got a long time horizon, and if you just take a look at the stock chart, just keep putting money in. Time is your biggest friend. And the second thing I would say is begin to go tax-free as much as you can. So if you can put money into Roths, or if you're getting your match and you can Roth your 401k, depending on your specific tax bracket, that's going to be one of the greatest things, because many people believe that taxes are going to be much higher in the future when you get there. And tax-free money is going to be worth a whole lot more than taxed money, especially when rates could be significantly higher.
Yeah, great information. And Tatiana, what is your outlook on the economy right now? Are we headed into an inflation or a recession?
Yeah, I somewhat touched upon that earlier. I can't really see a scenario where we don't have some increased inflation. I mean, I think we're all keeping our fingers crossed that it'll be moderate. And most experts are saying, late summer, fall is when it hits. And the reason for that is businesses work through their inventory. A lot of times, because of the uncertainty, they also say, well, I'm going to absorb some of this now, but then they can't do that long term, right? So, that's one major issue. And of course, if inflation still continues to be an issue, then interest rates can't come down, or can't come down as much. But then the other nuance that I haven't seen to this extent is that because there's so much uncertainty, and because a lot of that is longer term because of the deficit, we were knocked down in terms of the credit rating by Moody's, and that has impacted the 10-year Treasury. So that sounds, very complex, but really it's just, that's a reflection of the confidence and the yield on bonds and so forth. So if that stays elevated, even if interest rates are brought down a little bit by the Fed, that 10-year Treasury is going to stay high. And that's going to make it that much more difficult, not only for people to buy homes, but also for businesses to invest. And that's a major component of GDP as well. So, that structural, longer-term thing with more retirees, because, almost 40% of our deficit is Social Security and Medicare. It's not federal agencies. I know that's that's what some people would think, but it's not. It's not really some of these smaller components. And then it's a trillion a year just on interest. It's never been that high, and there's an opportunity cost for those dollars. You're not investing those dollars in education, training for advanced manufacturing jobs, child care subsidies so more parents can actually go to work and it makes financial sense for them to go to work and so forth. So you put all that together, and the smart investors are going, the long-term prospects for the United States aren't looking quite as rosy. And I hope that changes. But I'll say something positive before the end.
Hey, let me tee off that, because there is a silver lining in this right here. With higher interest rates, yes, it's harder for purchasing a home, it's harder for buying cars. It is the most attractive time I have ever seen in my career, which has been about 15 years, for annuity purchases for people that are getting close to retirement. And the reason is, when interest rates come down, you refinance your house to get a lower payment. When interest rates go up, you refinance your future income, or your, in essence, an annuity, because annuity companies have significantly more money to work with, and the payout rates are phenomenal. It's really interesting. I'm seeing, in some cases, a 60 or 65-year-old can get a fixed index annuity, and with a few years of deferral, they can get a 7% payout rate, and that is guaranteed for them, their spouse, their lives, for as long as they live. So as we peak, and hopefully we will see these interest rates come down, there is an opportunity to potentially grab something at the highest levels and secure your base income that could last for the rest of your life.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Speaking of businesses, we touched upon that. What's some real-life practical actions that businesses can do right now for chances of survival long term?
Well, this might sound oversimplified, but I used to work for one of the major health systems in the community, and part of my job was hiring physicians on board. And my first piece of advice to them after our contract was negotiated and completed was, don't go buy the 7 Series BMW right now. Buy the 3, okay? You don't have to live in kissing camels the first year. You can live elsewhere. So I think living within our means is a cultural dynamic that we really need to learn and understand better. Because keeping up with the Joneses is almost part and parcel of what we do here. And it gets us sideways with our finances very early in the discussion, and then we spend a good part of our 30s and 40s catching up so that we can hopefully be in a place by our 50s. So that's why it's so important to talk to folks like you really early on, so they get that pragmatic advice.
some advice we could all learn from.
Absolutely.
Well, you're watching a primetime panel on the current economic landscape.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to our primetime panel on the economy and its impact on Southern Colorado.
With so much uncertainty going around nationwide, we think it's important to address our state, where we are, and how we can prepare for the future.
Now, we touched upon Colorado, but how does Colorado stack up against the rest? Tatiana, you want to take it away, and how does it look for the future?
Sure. Yeah, I actually have the privilege of being on the Governor's Council of Economists. We help the state economist with revenue projections and therefore forming a budget that he can then turn around and give to the state legislature. And I learn a lot from these individuals about what's going on in around the state, but we also get the holistic picture, right? And yesterday, it was 11 years since we moved to Colorado, and I've never been here at a time where we weren't outperforming the nation. And that's a mixture of wonderful things that we have, not only our natural beauty and so forth, but we're the second most educated in the state. So that means we attract high knowledge workers and therefore a lot of innovation. I mean, just a great positive momentum, right? Our population growth had been double the nation's population growth rate for decades, actually, and younger median age. The things that are kind of changing now in the state of Colorado, and the reason we have almost $1 billion deficit, which I have never seen since we've been here, is because, number one, we're actually starting to age now. You're the only one who's not a representation of
right,
that.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, we're still younger, but the rate at which the retirees are now becoming, our residents are becoming retirees is much, much faster than it's been in the past. So that hits the income tax base, even some individuals who get on Medicaid in addition to Medicare and so forth. Another major reason is, simply because of the expenditures that we've had to, particularly for Medicaid. So that's on the chopping block as well, and that's a federal issue, right? So unfortunately, we're not in the fantastic state that we were in before. However, I'm not going to say that we're falling off either. We're more middle of the pack now. But I used to go around the country and say, well, Colorado is doing one of the best, in the nation. And I can't quite say that anymore. So, we're going to have to be prudent about how we look at our expenditures moving forward. And I'm a big advocate, even though none of us like taxes and too much spending or too much government intervention. I'm a big advocate of let's take the dollars that we can and invest again for things like childcare, so more people can work, training people for the jobs of today, is a lot of the trades, coding and so forth, because that's where we need to go. We need to go to increasing our tax base because we're not going to change the fact that people are retiring.
And along the topic of local economy and stuff like that, Dirk, I want to ask you, how does buying locally, how does that help our economy here in Southern Colorado?
Well, it always helps because you're dealing with somebody who lives here, works here, and plays here. And those dollars will tend to stay in the community and reinvest into our infrastructure and everything else. So everybody loves Amazon's convenience or other big box stores, but I would get out and venture a little bit and see what's out there, because there's a lot of shops in a lot of different corridors. There's a lot of different service providers out there who have opportunities that you can work with them directly in person, right? Build that relationship. What a concept. And then keep those dollars here floating in the community. For business owners, I would say definitely use the free resources that we have available to us here in the community. Free or very next to free. So all the chambers have great programs, okay? In addition to that, the SBDC has phenomenal programs for those folks who want to start their business here. So don't be afraid to take a risk and go out there and get your business started. Sometimes, you may have an expertise in making widgets or whatever you do, but you may not have a finance background, or you may not have a business background. That's okay. That's what the SBDC is there for, because they have subject matter experts in probably 100 different categories who can walk you through those different parts so you can understand them. How to do taxes, business planning, marketing planning, and so forth. So there's a lot of resources available to the businesses here, and as you get stronger, then your audience base tends to grow stronger as well. Okay, if you have a finer, more clean process in your business, whether you're serving food or whether you're delivering professional services, if you have that confidence, that will resonate with your audiences and your consumers, and you'll bring them back more.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and then Chris, looking at you now, what should people be planning for as far as retirement goes in understanding our current economic environment?
Yeah, so I love the word confidence because that means a whole lot to me and to our retirees. You know, I think one of the most important things is there's always going to be uncertainty. You don't know what the stock market's going to do. You're going to be retired potentially for 30 years, maybe 35 years. There's going to be ups and downs. You don't know how long you're going to live. But what you can be confident in is if you actually transition from where you were to where you need to go. What got you to retirement is not what's going to get you through retirement. And a lot of people don't realize that, both your strategies as well as the holdings that you have. When you were early, what got you there was what we talked about earlier. Put money away, let it grow, 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 grow. And then you get to that point where I call it the retirement danger zone. You're just a few years away from retirement. At that point, you cannot afford a 2008 type market crash and lose 40 or 50% of your entire nest egg that took 3 or 4 decades to save. And how many of you know we can lose money a whole lot faster than we can re-earn it and resave it? Yep. Money disappears faster. So we like to help people or encourage them to really bucket their money into 3 different baskets. The first one's called safety. And so this is my sleep at night money. So if there's uncertain times and if I do retire, I don't have paychecks anymore. So I've got money where if I need to fix the water heater or replace a roof from a hailstorm, right, or pay a deductible, I've got a sleep at night money account that I can go to, no problem. The second one is what we call income. This income basket, this is in addition to your Social Security, your pension, whatever that difference is that you need to live your lifestyle, this is the money you put there specifically to produce income. So it's going to be income that you're going to live on for the rest of your life. It's going to keep up with inflation for 30 years. And then you know, basically what you're doing is you are blowing away the future fog of uncertainty, because the certainty that you do have is my money's going to last, I'm going to have enough, it's going to increase, and if something happens to me, my spouse is going to be okay. And if the market crashes, if we built in your vacation into that, you don't have to not go on vacation. You can keep spending because you've built in certainty. And then our third bucket is what we call growth. And this is where we push that money out a little bit longer. We've got a longer time horizon. And so if the market goes down, we don't have to sell or liquidate those shares when the market's down. We've got time for it to recover because we've got what I call volatility shields. We pull from the income basket that's not losing money when the market's down. So if you're getting close to retirement, really important to work with, I would say, an advisor that really specializes in the second half of life, because the second half of life is much more complex than the first half of life when it comes to finances.
Uncertainty seems to be the common denominator across every board here. And we could call this our closing thoughts if you want. And we'll start with you, Dirk. It seems like there's always going to be uncertainty if you're even starting a business. You're never going to know. So how can you assure, say, the small businesses out there, even though it seems uncertain, to forge ahead?
Yeah, certainty is a strong word, right. So, or assured. But you need to work your business. Don't let your business work you. And this is a great opportunity for business owners to start learning new tools like AI and start implementing them into your system to try to, ease workflow a little bit, ease the customer experience if you can a little bit. Certainly the mundane tasks that are out there, whether it's inventory or accounting and things like that, those are areas where you can see some efficiencies and grow and maybe even cut some cost. So now's a great time, actually, when we're not so sure about what's next, to maybe really refine some of the fine-tuning of your business.
And Tatiana, here's your opportunity for that positive element.
Yeah, that's funny, because that's just what I have. Especially with what's happened with housing lately, and working on a housing needs assessment for the city and so forth, really learning about how much of housing policy is local. And how much of everything is local. Yes. And honestly, that's part of the reason I also moved here, because I was like, it's a perfect size city to be able, and people are pretty collegial, you can pick up the phone. I think that's a huge asset that we have here. Cities that know how to work together. You have, fantastic programs like Upahsett County has this down payment assistance program. Most people don't even know about it. My segment this week, I'm going to touch upon it a little bit more. But again, taking advantage of some of the things that are happening locally, where you can be innovative with new building mechanisms, modular homes, all those kinds of things. The programs at the state and the local level that can help you get into that first home and so forth. All of those different types of things, policies for small businesses, that's where it gets exciting, because that's where we live. We live at the local level, right? So why not capitalize on some of the assets that we have locally and statewide?
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, embrace uncertainty, and there's some certain things that you can do to bring some certainty in, or at least, I'm a mountain biker and a motorcycle, and there's something about having great suspension on your vehicles, because you can absorb a lot of the bumps. And I would say probably one of the most important things is, don't just sit back and let the market go where it's going to go if you're really close to retirement. If you're in that danger zone, you need to make some transitions and find some help to do that. And one of the things is put some protection underneath your nest egg. And what I mean by that, there are certain asset classes that do not go down when the stock market goes down. There are certain asset classes, like some what we call buffered exchange traded funds, that when the stock market goes down, they will absorb the first 10 or the first 15% of any loss. And what I find for my clients is the phone doesn't ring off the hook when the market starts to go through these times of uncertainty, because those buffers act as a type of a psychological safety net. Literally, when you watch Fox 21 News at night and you see, oh, the market's down today, rather than have that negative feeling in your gut, you've got this, oh, I'm covered for the first 10 or 15%. And what happens is it just gives you this psychological freedom to go and enjoy life and kind of absorb that like a shock absorber. And that's what life is about. Life really is about, it's really the accumulation of memories, right, and experiences. And that's the purpose of money. The purpose of money when you retire is to buy as many fun experiences as you can and share them with the people that you love.
Yeah, great stuff and great information, you guys. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this special presentation of Fox 21 News as we walk through the current economic landscape.
Now, to see the full panel in its entirety and get a glimpse of how these topics may impact you, just head to our website, fox21news.com. Have a great night.